Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's social hour. Hopefully, it's an opportunity for you to sit back. We can talk about comics and books and movies and games and all that fun stuff, and kind of relax and chill out for a little bit before we really dive in to the rest of this week. So before we really get started tonight, I just saw the news about DC Comics and some layoffs. It sounds like I don't know if all of it's been verified yet, so I don't want to dig too much into it, and really I don't want to dwell on it too much because this is supposed to be positive, fun, lighthearted. But I've been seeing a lot of names thrown out there of people who are getting laid off at DC and at Warner Brothers, and I feel for them. I know these are difficult times. This kind of event is not easy for the employees. Obviously, the people who are losing their jobs. In my previous life, some people know this, some people don't. In my previous life, I was a career counselor, and one of the things we had to do was we sometimes go in when companies were doing these layoff events, and we have to talk to the employees and try to guide them in what to do next. And they were awful. These are awful events. They are terrible for the employees, and I really feel bad for them. So my heart goes out to them. I hope everyone who's impacted by this lands on their feet and does well. But that said, let's try to focus on some positivity. I actually have the wonderful Cindy Bunn is helping me behind the scenes today, helping me with some questions. If we get any, we'll post them, and I'll try to address your questions if you have some, and we can talk those out. First things first. Now that we're into the fun part of the show, I have my margarita, which is what was suggested for my drink for tonight. Hopefully, everyone else has a drink, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Delicious. This margarita is made with Cazadores tequila, which is one of my favorite tequilas. It also has a little bit of it has some margarita mix in there and some triple sec and lime juice. But my secret ingredient is I put just a little bit of peach wine in there, and it gives it a really nice flavor. Anyway, delicious margarita. I hope you guys are enjoying a delicious beverage too. So updates from last week. A couple of things we talked about. The Democritus brand and the Endless Machine. Super good news there. The campaign was super successful. 250% of our funding goal. So we are now working on actually delivering it. We're working on getting it finalized letters of the second issue. First issue's all done. Finalized letters of the second issue. We're going to be working with the printer on getting those put together. And Jimmy Z, my co-writer and owner of Little Shop of Comics in Cuba, Missouri, is also going to be doing most of our fulfillment. So he's getting ready for that. He's buckling down. So it's gonna be a fun few weeks getting that book put together and delivered. But I'm super excited about it, and thank you so much to the people. I think we had 750 backers or so, which is great for a comic like that. We will be doing a slacker backer kind of setup. So if you weren't able to support the Kickstarter, but you still want to get the comic, in the next few weeks, we'll be putting up this slacker backer, which allows you to basically pre-order the book as well, so you can get your copies there. So that's awesome. A little bit of sad news in terms of that stuff. We talked about the Priscilla plush doll last week. That did not reach its pre-order threshold, so those will not be going into production at this time. Sad to hear it. But I think it'll probably come back around again. Look, times are tough right now. People have to be careful where they're spending their money. I understand. but I think this will come back around, and we'll have another opportunity to make it happen in the near future. So that's those a couple updates from last week. I also the book I announced last week, or the project I announced last week, Deepest Catacombs, which is sort of this Dungeons and Dragons epic fantasy style adventure that will be told in one-page increments, each page by a different artist, each page representing an advertisement for a role-playing game that never existed. That will launch to the public on Wednesday of this week. So it's actually the first episode is actually on my Patreon right now for patrons, but on Wednesday it goes live to the public, and then we'll start loading a lot of background material and gaming resources and things like that. That'll be awesome, and I'm super excited about it. We'll probably launch episode 2 this week as well, just because we're so happy with it. It's such a cool book and a cool project that I won't be able to resist. So check out. Just stay tuned. If you're a member of my Patreon or a supporter, you already have seen it. If not, stay tuned. It will go live on Wednesday, midday on Wednesday, and you'll be able to read the first installment. So there you go. This week I am working heavily on a prose novella that I'm knee deep in. It's taking up all my time trying to get this thing wrapped up. It is a horror story. I can't tell you much more than that. It's for a publisher I haven't worked for before, and I'm very excited to see it. It's going to be a great story if you're a fan of horror stories. This one's gonna be a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a different kind of story for me. Very creepy, very weird though, which is not that different for me. And I'm excited to see that come out. And this is the week that I'm wrapping it all up, polishing it, and getting it out to the publisher. That deep breath is me trying not to have a panic attack over it. Other than that, I'm working on a few comics. Like I said, a few things picked back up as of last week, and we will be announcing all of those. I'm looking at, you can't see it, this is my to-do list board over here. I'm looking at it to make sure there's anything I can announce. And there's not. I do know that I have 2 new projects that are going to be coming out in December, but they haven't been announced yet. I would anticipate, and they'll solicit as comics. They'll solicit in October, I guess, and I think probably they will announce them a few weeks before the solicit even. So as soon as I can tell you about those, I will. I just got covers for the first 2 issues of one of them this last week, and the covers are amazing. They're great. I actually got giddy when I saw the second cover. It's so awesome. So stay tuned for that. So I thought I'd do something a little different this week, something I might start doing. I get a lot of mail, and I get a lot of cool things in the mail. Some of it's stuff I order, some of it's stuff people have sent me, and I thought I would share some of my sort of my mailbag, right? So this week, a couple of things I haven't even opened yet. Image Comics sent me a copy of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Pulp, which I'm excited to dig into. I have not even cracked open the book yet, but it's one of the next up on my reading pile, along with Cruel Summer, also by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Image sent this to me. It's such a pretty book. I almost hate taking it out of the shrink wrap, but I'll be reading this in the next week or so. So I'm really thrilled about these 2 books. I saw Ronnie said it's a great story. I saw he posted on Twitter today that he was reading one of them, or yesterday. So I got to catch up with the great Ronnie Barron. Ronnie Barron, for those who don't know, is the producer of a podcast that Cindy and I do called The Bungalow. The Bungalow, we talk about life, love, comics, weird stuff, music, just about everything. And we just posted a new episode right now. You can find it. Nerdy Legion is our is where we post all those, and we're going to be continuing to do them, obviously, but you can catch up on them. They're fun to listen to. I think we're getting our footing for that podcast. So check that out if you haven't yet. I think it's a lot of fun. Cindy's going to be a guest for us here in the near future, and we'll get a little more of a taste of what the bungalow is all about. Other things I got in the mail. I kickstart a lot of weird stuff, and this week I got these little, you can't really see them too well, I don't think, but these little storage boxes, and they have these cool magnetic lids that swing out and close. This one I'm using as a dice tray for gaming. It even has basically has a dice tray on top, so I put my dice in, and when I need to kill the players in my Dungeons and Dragons campaign, I can reach right in and take them out very easily. But I got a couple of these. These are called Revolve Tech boxes. I think they're really cool. If nothing else, they're fun to play with. Swing the tops around. But fun little boxes there that I got off Kickstarter. Also off Kickstarter, I just got this, and I've read this 1,000 times, but I got Dan Brereton's Giant Killer hardcover omnibus edition. It's gorgeous in every way. I have the copy up on my shelf back here, but this one will replace it. It's got a great cover, and then check this. It's got a nice hand-drawn sketch of Giant Killer right there in the cover. It's a beautiful book. Dan is running some amazing Kickstarters. He's got so many cool projects in the works. He's one of my favorite artists. He did a book called Nocturnals, which I think very, very highly of. And he was actually the artist that I worked with on one of my first Marvel projects. He did the art on the Bride of Nine Spiders Immortal Weapons tie-in that I did. It was a single issue of that series that I did, and they messaged me and said, "Would you be interested in working with Dan Brereton?" And my mouth just dropped, because yes, of course I would want to work with Dan. We've become friends since then, and he's a great guy, great work, great projects. Today I also received my Nightworms package. Nightworms is sort of a blind box for horror fiction. I have already cut it open because I didn't want you guys to see me cut my hand open with a knife trying to open a package on live video, but I haven't looked in the package yet. So I'm gonna take these out and we'll see what we got this week or this month from Nightworms. Oh wow, this is awesome. So we got a copy of MALORIE by Josh Malerman. This is the sequel to Bird Box, which is a great novel. Most people remember a lot of people know the movie. The novel's awesome. I'm super excited to read this. So that's a great addition to the to be read pile. And we have Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. So that's very cool. A couple of great books. And then there's always this envelope with some cool items. We've got some cool stickers. Looks like an autographed book plate for MALORIE. Some cool postcards for different things that are coming out. An autographed book plate for Night of the Mannequins. Bookmarks and Campfire Fears s'mores tea. So I don't know what s'mores tea tastes like. I almost don't want to tear the package open because it's really cool looking. But if you're into horror fiction, Nightworms is a great way to get some really cool material to read, and great side items and crunchy bits. But all those things are really cool. But I have to share, this is the thing that I got this week that I am more excited about than any other item. So when I was a kid, you all know I like role-playing games, and I've played D&D for years, but when I was a kid, the very first role-playing game I ever played was a little box set called The Wizard's Bane. And it came with miniatures, and it had a solo adventure in it, and you could then play with your friends if you wanted. It had paints in it. They did a bunch of them. They did The Wizard's Bane and the Cleric's Quest and the Fighter's Fury. And they were all cool. I had a couple of them, but the ones I had were very cool, and I loved them dearly. And then they disappeared. I haven't seen them in 40 years. I have not been able to find one of these things. And I've gone to Gen Con, and I've asked the collectors, and you just can't find them anymore. And then I happened to be talking to my pal Anton about games and things that we loved when we were, when we were younger. And as I'm talking to him, I said, well, let me just search. And sure enough, on eBay, I found Wizard's Bane, the very first, kind of role-playing game I ever played, still in the shrink wrap, in amazing shape. Obviously, the paint's inside, they're dry as a bone. And some of the figures have popped off the sprues, but so what? This thing was awesome. It was, look at that wizard. Look how badass he is. Just looking at the box and reading the box brings back so many memories. I remember when I was painting the figures, there's a little black cat that's like a familiar, and I remember just dunking him in the black paint when I was painting him, because I didn't want to bother. That's the quickest way to paint the little black cat, was just to dunk him. So I dunked him, and it's got a little pit fiend in it, and a succubus, and a wizard, of course. And it was just such a fun game. And I can't believe I found one in this kind of condition. I'm super excited about it. I've already made plans to get like a shadow box to put it in, because it's so awesome. I'm not going to open it up and play it, but I want to. So there's that. So if you have any questions, now's a great time, or comments, or you want to tell me how awesome my margarita sounds, now's a great time to throw some of those my way. I didn't put my glasses on before this, so I probably can't read them. But hey, I'll do my best. If not, I had a few questions that I saw on Patreon and Twitter earlier for people who might not be watching live, but hello, Blackie. Yes. Well, Blackie, I have to admit, you are the most handsome artist I know that's named Blackie. For those of you who don't know, Blackie Shepherd, he's a very talented artist. Some really good stuff. We worked on a lot of projects together. Pumpkinhead. We did Pumpkinhead together, which was our sequel to the 80s movie that we both love so much. Blackie's also doing some stuff for Transformers right now with IDW, which looks awesome. He's a great artist. He did some stuff with us on Graveyard Slaughter, and we're actually going to be doing more Graveyard Slaughter projects in the future. So hello, Blackie, and thanks for joining us tonight. All right, you are known and loved for your horror and dark science fiction, but is there any type of genre that you are afraid to write and would like to try, or what would you never write? I don't know if there's a genre I'm afraid to try. I think there are some that I am better suited to than others. I'm probably, look, I don't know that I'm suited to write a romance comic. But I guess it, in the right, if inspiration strikes, maybe I would write one. But I don't know if I'm suited for that. Is there something I would never write? I don't like to say never, because I feel like there's always this opportunity that some genius idea will come up, and I will. I just can't pass it up, and I have to go for it. How long do you sit on a comic story idea before following through in writing? It's completely different for every project. So some of my books, I come up with the idea. It hits me like a bolt of lightning, and I just immediately start working on it, start writing. Others sit for a while, and you know, some great examples. A couple of books I did for Aftershock. Brothers Dracul is a series that I did for Aftershock, and I did it basically because the artist Mirko Kolak messaged me and said, "Hey, I sure would like to do a book about Dracula," and immediately I had this idea for Dracula or Vlad Tepes and his brother Radu as teenagers being trained as vampire hunters in the Ottoman Empire, and off to the races. And we were doing that book within a few weeks. Others like Unholy Grail, I have notes on Unholy Grail from 25 years ago. And it's just a book that it's an idea that sat there until I found the right time and place to make it happen. So it's different for every book. Some come fast, some take decades to actually happen. Hey, Sean. Sean is a Patreon supporter, and I saw this question on Patreon today, and I was going to actually answer it here anyway. But thank you for joining me. So, do I have any tips for writing one-page comics like Deepest Catacombs or the Harrow County backup stories? And yeah, Sean, man, they can be so difficult to write. And they're different ones. Like the Harrow County backup stories are one page, and that's it for the most part. So those are even a little more difficult than the stories like the Deepest Catacombs, which are one page, but they kind of continue on. So the most important thing is for those one-page stories, every panel has to count. There can be no wasted space, no wasted energy. Every panel in the story has to represent something that moves that tale to its completion. And usually I'd say, set up the location very quickly in the first couple of panels, and then you can focus. You don't necessarily have to worry so much about location in the next few panels, and then you can do another sort of closing shot that includes some location to remind readers where they are. When I'm writing a regular comic issue, page by page, I like to think of every page I want to remind the reader of the characters and the location. I want to make sure they know that with every page they turn to, there's a reminder in some way, a visual cue or something. And with a one-page comic, you kind of have to do that every panel to some degree. And you got to trim the fat. They're tough. It's interesting to me because Deepest Catacombs is going to end up being about the first arc or issue is going to end up being about 24 pages. And what's really interesting is that series, those 24 pages covers so much space. So much happens over those 24 pages. Stuff that probably in a full-blown comic book series would take arcs and arcs to happen. So it's really interesting to see it as I'm writing it in a different way and kind of approaching it differently. It's really cool about how it all comes together in such a bigger way. When you read comics, which writers do you like to read? I have a lot of different writers. Like Grant Morrison is probably my favorite of the modern writers. I think I just like the mayhem he brings to the page. So Grant Morrison's right up there, right at the top. Of older comics, I love Bill Mantlo. I think is still one of the greatest storytellers and world builders that's ever been in comics. So there you go. It's a common trope that an artist, oh my gosh, John, that an artist must suffer for their art. What is your stand on this? can happy people make art? Absolutely, happy people can make art. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you have to be miserable to be a creator or an artist. I think that I think working in publishing and working in producing material for the public as a writer or as an artist can sometimes open the door to being a little unhappy and miserable, because you can't please everyone, and you have to kind of understand that if you try to create with the idea of pleasing everyone, that way leads madness. But yeah, happy people can create art. They just don't stay happy very long. Joseph, hey, Mr. Bunn, really enjoyed that Sinestro story from the Green Lantern 80th anniversary. Would you ever want to write a cyberpunk horror comic story or a horror story set in space? Joseph, I have great news for you, my friend. Such great news. 2 bits of great news, in fact. First of all, I am doing a cyberpunk story for Dark Horse, tie into the Cyberpunk 2077 video game. It is available for pre-order right now. So you can go order issue 1 from Dark Horse. You can go to your comic shop and get that right on your pull and hold list. But as far as a horror story set in space, you should check out Rogue Planet. Issue 3 just came out, so you should be able to still get them at your local shop or get them online or wherever or read them digitally. But Rogue Planet is absolutely 1000% a horror story set in space. It's a book that shows off my love for movies like The Thing and Alien and Aliens and Event Horizon, and it's a great, gory, bloody mess of a horror story. So Rogue Planet from Oni Press, go check that out and you'll love it. Am I going to be writing any future Star Wars books? That's it's not my call, unfortunately. I'd love to write some more. I've talked to folks at Lucasfilm who say they want me to write more, but it really falls to the editorial at Marvel and when there's openings and what they want to do with the books. But right now, I would say no, probably not. I love Star Wars. I loved it since I was a kid, but I'm also happy just telling my own stories. But yeah, I'd like to, but it's not my call. If you'd like to see me write more Marvel stories or more Star Wars books for Marvel, be a great time for you to reach out to Marvel on Twitter or whatever and tell them, hey, what's up? Where's Cullen Bunn's Ewok bounty hunter story? Actually, it's a Jawa bounty hunter, but I'd go with the Ewok too. Hey, Richard, any interest in taking over Marvel's upcoming Aliens and Predator books? Absolutely. I have reached out to Marvel about it. Before the license changed hands, I had a couple of pitches for Alien stories that were in the works at Dark Horse. I had a big Aliens versus Predator story a few years ago. I posted some artwork for it and some of the pitch materials on my Patreon. That was in the works, and it just things with those licensed property fall apart a lot. But yeah, I'd absolutely love to get a crack at some of those characters now that they're moving over to Marvel. But again, if that's something that you guys would like to see, I would absolutely tell the editors at Marvel that that you'd like to see me write an Alien or Predators book. Hello, the Wilson clan. That Eli, are you now a baseball card collector too? Eli collects everything, it seems like, but all right. Thank you for watching. Terry, my favorite kind of margarita, definitely on the rocks. I mean, I can enjoy a frozen margarita, and I have many times, but they're not my favorite. It's not what I'm gonna order right off the bat. I think the last ones I had were at Dallas Barbecue in New York City. Cindy and I, on the night we got there, that was our first stop, was Dallas Barbecue. And they have these ginormous frozen margaritas, different flavors, and you can pour different shots into them. And they're full of umbrellas and fruits and everything, and they're great. But no, usually on the rocks, and I am a salt guy for sure. Hey, Leonard. So if I could cross over any two horror franchises, what would they be? Phantasm immediately comes to mind. The Phantasm series is one of my favorite horror movie franchises. Absolutely love it. I have reached out to Don Coscarelli to try to get him to let me write a Phantasm comic somehow, some way. So Phantasm has to be right there on the top. And then, I guess with Phantasm, you almost have to go Evil Dead, an Evil Dead Phantasm crossover, which my friend Brian Keene did a short story called Hell Comes to S-Mart, or Hell at S-Mart. He did years and years ago for a Phantasm fanzine. So you can find that, and it's a pretty fun short story. But yeah, maybe definitely Phantasm, probably Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. We need some horror that takes place in the Midwest, preferably in the great state of Missouri. Have you anything in the works? So this is Mr. Macabre. Mr. Macabre is I guess he is the horror host for the great Phoenix Comics in Peculiar, Missouri. And Macabre and I have an interesting rivalry in history. He is my frenemy. But horror that takes place in the Midwest, I always have some Missouri horror in the works. I wonder if I can even mention this. I don't think I'm supposed to, but I will anyway, because I can't get in trouble for it. So first of all, horror in the Midwest, if you haven't read Blood Feud from Oni Press, you should read Blood Feud, because it's set right in the Ozarks. It's a vampire tale with spiders, and lots of them. And it was inspired when I first moved to Missouri, and when I lived in Thayer, Missouri. I remember driving down the road, the dirt road that led back to my family's home, and there were just thousands of tarantulas crawling across the road. I mean, carpeting it. You couldn't see the dirt road beneath the tarantulas, because the Thayer's in like a migration area for these Texas browns. And that was the inspiration for years later what would become a novella I wrote, and called Blood Feud, and then later a comic series that Oni Press published. So there's that. And then the thing I can't really mention, but I'm going to anyways, I just completed a long short story that takes place in Centralia, Missouri, and will be part of a collection that's coming out shortly. It's really cool. It's a really cool concept for a collection. It's a really cool story that will lead to more stories, I hope. That's prose. How did I get my break in the industry? Hey, Andrew, thanks for that question. So I tried for years and years to break in as a comic writer. It took me a really long time. I was sending out proposal after proposal after proposal to Marvel and DC for my, here's my Etrigan the Demon story. Here's my Ghost Rider story. Here's my Spider-Man story. And I got back my form letter rejections over and over again. What finally ended up working for me is I was actually working at a comic shop. And one of my coworkers was an aspiring artist named Brian Hurt. And Brian and I started talking about doing a book together. And it took us a while to make that happen. But eventually, we did a book that we pitched to Oni Press. I was able to pitch it with art because of Brian, called The Damned. And they picked it up almost immediately. They picked up the book and they went into production. And that was my stepping stone into the industry. And that led to another book called The Tooth, and then another book called The Six Gun, all with Oni Press. And then some editors at DC liked The Six Gun, so they contacted me and asked me to write an arc of Superman, Batman. And then I started talking to some editors at Marvel who also liked The Six Gun, and it blew up from there. And that's really as far as I'm concerned, that's the way to break in the industry and be able to make a living at it. Is I was able to do my own thing. I got an artist who would work with me for my first couple of books, and we were able to do that project, and that turned into another project, and that turned into another project, and then that got the attention from other publishers, and they started offering me more work. So that's the big tip: is do your own thing. Don't worry about writing the best Spider-Man story. Write a story for you. Figure out how to work with an artist, how to find an artist, get somebody to draw it for you, and get it out there, either with a smaller publisher, independent publisher, self-publish it, but get that book out there and get it in the hands of other editors. From the 60s, I gotta remember artists from the 60s. Come on, man. Can I just say my Mount Rushmore of comic artists, and maybe they're from the 60s? I don't know. I would say, again, I'm not worried about when. Wrightson, Michael Golden, Jack Kirby, and I guess I kind of throw Ditko in there, even though I didn't love Ditko when I was a younger person. I didn't fully appreciate his art until much later. There we go. That's my Mount Rushmore. Someone asked on Twitter who your Mount Rushmore of comic book writers were, and they said post 4 pictures, and I posted 4 pictures of myself because that's how I am. I'm a big jerk that way. Hey, Jesse, my favorite property or character that I'd like to write but haven't yet. I don't feel like I've gotten my fair shot at Swamp Thing or Etrigan the Demon or Man Thing. All of those characters are some I would love to write. Here's my favorite Man Thing story pitch, or event that surrounds a Man Thing story pitch. I was at it was either at New York Comic Con or I was at a Marvel retreat, and we all went to dinner that night, and I was sitting around the table with a bunch of editors and writers. And this editor I was sitting right next to said, well, you know what I really want is a great Man Thing story. And I immediately pitched him a Man Thing story. And I'm not going to tell you guys the story because it's awesome and I still would like to tell it. But I pitched him a Man Thing story on the spot. I said, well, here's what you should do. I told him the story, kind of broke it down for him, told him how it was different from what you've read before. And the editor said, that's a great idea. I love that story. And then he looked to another writer across the table from him and said, would you be able to put together some documentation, a pitch for that? So I pitched him the story. He went to another writer and asked if they would pitch that same book to them, or write that book for him. How you like those apples? Yes, artists must suffer for their work. Anyway, I wish the book never came out, but it's still an awesome idea that I should write me. That was a long time ago. Yes, Jasper, I see you said Mike Plug. That's actually a really good choice for the Mount Rushmore comics. Derek bought a goat from a local farmer, and it keeps sneaking in the house to eat his comics. What is the best way to ease its cravings and save my comic book collection? Derek, you've come to the right place, my friend. You've come to the right place. So I used to have goats aplenty. Goats aplenty. And those goats didn't eat my comics, but what they liked to do was to sleep on the hood of my car at night. And sometimes you'd look out the window and the billy goat was rearing up on the hood and headbutting another goat, and it was just destroying the hood of my car. So we trained my Rottweiler to run him off the car. And then the Rottweiler started sleeping on the hood of the car and scratching it up with his big old paws. But what you do is you get some newspapers. Take the comic section. Goats recognize comics versus, print stories. Throw those out there occasionally, wherever you are currently keeping your comics, which, how the hell are your goats getting in your house, first of all? But put those newspapers in your goat accessible comic room and move your comic books to a room that is not goat accessible. Problem solved. You're welcome. Cindy has never watched The Witch, and I walk through the house going, Black Phillip, and she has no idea what I'm talking about. But he does think that comics are delicious. Yeah, I'm interested in pitching for DC Black Label book. I've pitched a Swamp Thing Black Label book that didn't happen. I've gotten this close on Swamp Thing numerous times. It's interesting because I'm doing a book right now. I'm doing a couple of books for another publisher that are kind of in that Black Label format. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, I'd love to at some point. Again with this Black Phillip. Barrett, would I ever pitch a book where a Rottweiler and a billy goat team up to fight supernatural crime? I feel like the dog supernatural crime fighter is already taken care of, but I would love to. And that Rottweiler was like the king of Rottweilers. He would have been a great supernatural crime fighter. See, I saw this question pop up on the side, and I thought it wouldn't get posted here in front of me. Well, and I'm assuming I don't know. You know what? Maybe this thing has to happen. But Cindy has long thought that I needed to write a story about a wrecker truck driver who crucifies people on the back. And she's just not going to let that go. She's just not going to let it go. And I really wish she would just write it herself. But I don't think it's going to happen. And I just can't. I think the only person who can really tell that story is Cindy Bunn. And sequel to Witchhammer. I would love to do a sequel to Witchhammer. It's always been intended to be 3 books. It just all depends on so many factors. I would, like I said, I'd like to do one. I have plans to do it. I have them outlined and ready, but I don't know that you're going to see it anytime soon. It would be really cool, though. I don't think it's dead, but it just hasn't. It hasn't happened yet. Shannon, I would love to see you do a book with Hester and Parks. Do you have a dream team that you would like to work with? I feel like I've been really lucky working with a lot of different creators that I really admire, and there's nobody that there's very few that I just say this is my dream team I have to work with. I will always do books with Brian Hurt if I have the option. Brian and I will always work together. I'd love to do a book with Chris Somney. Chris and I pitched a book called Freak Hunter years and years ago before I had done The Dam, before I had broken in anywhere. That was the first thing I pitched, was a book with Chris Somney. And I'd love to, I don't know that I want to do that book, but I would love to do something with Chris at some point. So do we have other questions, or we think we're good on questions now? I don't know if we have others, but I know that I had some people last week ask me about how I outline comics and how I prepare comics, and I wasn't able to get to that, so I'm going to try to address that real quickly, hopefully in a way that makes sense. But in comics. Oh wait, I got another question here. I recently wrote a superhero revenge tale and self-published it. I'd love to have it turned into a comic or graphic novel, and how would you go about doing that? So Jesse, what I would do is you got to find an artist. And that's the rub for most writers. Finding an artist can be more difficult than actually getting a publisher to pick up the book. So what I would do is I would start searching for artists that whose work you like. Try to see if you can get somebody interested in the project doing it as a comic. I would go ahead and have it scripted out before you do that. Get a script done. Start seeking an artist. Definitely have like a one-page synopsis of the story that the artist that you approach can look at, and then see if you can find it. And it can be tough. I wish I could just tell you it's gonna be great. You're gonna find a lot of artists very quickly, but finding an artist can be very difficult. So just keep the faith, but you're going to have to take a lot of rejection from artists who just aren't ready to work with you. So anyway, let me just real quick, I'll go through some of my outlining process. For comics in particular, outlining is very important, because in a novel, I mean, I think outlining is great anyway. It really gives you focus where you're going. But for a comic, it's so constrained by the number of pages and the number of issues in a series or arc, number of pages in an issue, number of panels on the page. So there's so many things that constrain it, and you kind of have to plan it out and focus on it. So what I typically do is I sit down when I'm getting ready to write an issue. I'll sit down and I'll write every scene. I just list out, these are the scenes that are going to appear in this issue. And then I make a column and I write the number of pages that I think that scene is going to take. And then I don't worry about, I don't add them up. I just make a list of page numbers. And then I add them up in a third column. And when it's done, it looks something like this. This is from the Six Gun issue 5. If you haven't read the Six Gun issue 5, 1, what's wrong with you? 2, spoilers ahead. But I sat down and I listed the different scenes in this first. There's the vision of the Maw and a vision of dead Bill John, and there's you meet Gord Cantrell, and then I went and I said how many pages each of those scenes would take, and then I add them up. And almost always, once I add them up, I have over-planned the issue. So what should be a 22-page issue, I'll have planned 32 pages. And then I have to go back and I reduce each of those scenes. I start trimming. And you'll see on this one, those little black scratches where I scratched a page count out and rewrote it or replanned it for fewer pages. You'll see where I scratched out entire scenes that the book didn't need. And I really just wanted to focus on, what really moved that book forward. So that's the first thing I do is do that outline. And then after I've done that, I've got a good idea of how many pages I have and what it should, what each scene should take. I do another outline where I kind of break it down each page, and you'll see on this, I broke it down by the page turn. So there's page 1 all by itself, and then there's page 2 and 3, and then page 3, 4, and 5, and those represent the turn of the page and where where the scenes break down. So I'll do another quick dirty outline of this is where the scenes break down. And then after that, I do another outline. So I outline numerous times before I ever get to actual writing. I do another outline that'll look something like this, where I just in high level write down what's going to happen on each of those panels. Now, this was back at the Six Gun, when I was writing Six Gun volume or issue 5, so it's a long time ago. My outlining stages are very different. My outlines look a little different now in that I write them on, I actually type them up, and an artist could draw an entire comic based on my outline, really. But this is what the outlines used to look like. And it's pretty, similar, just a little more detail in my outline on each of those panels. And that's how I plan my comics. Then I'll do more where I'm actually putting together dialogue. I'll write dialogue as I'm doing this and things like that I'll plug into it later. But yeah, there you go. That's what my outlines look like. All that stuff is posted on Patreon for would-be writers. If you're interested in that kind of material, I post that stuff on Patreon in a lot more detail. Other questions? I saw some come in, but I haven't been paying that much attention to them. Let's see. So if secrets to grilling a great burger. Well, Jay, it's all in the seasoning, man. You got to season that burger the way that you want it to taste, and then you grill it and you wait until you see it. It browns, and then you wait until you see it sort of bubble up on the top. You'll get the sort of a moisture starting to bubble. And that's when you know it's kind of getting done. You flip it, but it's all in the seasoning, all seasoning. Do you need legal representation to submit a story to a publisher? No. You don't need to I know that there's always concern of, they're going to steal my idea. First of all, you can't what you can't do or shouldn't do is submit your story ideas without being asked. Not to publishers like Marvel or DC. So if you have a Spider-Man story or a Superman story or whatever, it's pointless to send it anyway unless they're asking. You're not going to get that story published. The way to get them but what you want them to do is to ask you, hey, would you submit a Spider-Man or a Superman story or whatever, and then you write your story idea. And don't do it to creators either. Please don't send me your ideas for stories, because I feel rude and terrible about it. I can't even open them, because I can't take the legal risk of you coming back and saying, Cullen stole my story that I sent him. I got plenty of my own story ideas. Don't share yours with any creator. Just don't. It's not good. It's not a good practice. But no, you don't need to have legal representation in place to submit to a publisher. If you're really crazy about it and really want to be diehard, sure, I guess, but it's not necessary. I've never had an attorney in place as part of a submission process. I have had an agent. I have an agent who represents some of my work, and he'll submit stuff, but not an attorney. Are we going to see a third Night of the Living Deadpool book to round out the trilogy? And love the first two. Joseph, I loved them too. Night of the Living Deadpool is my favorite of all my Deadpool material. And I would love to do a third series. I kind of feel like that ship has sailed and my time with Deadpool is done. And I've written, I don't know how many issues of Deadpool. So many issues of that character. And I have more stories to tell, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. You can, again, if you really want to see that happen, let Marvel know. But I don't know that you're going to see another Deadpool series from me right now. At what point do I write things like dialogue? So, that's a good question, Barrett. And different writers do it in different stages. Some writers, before they even do all the outlining you just saw me present, write dialogue. They just write all the dialogue that's going to appear in that issue, and then they go in the outline, and then they plug the dialogue into it as it goes. And they really, it's kind of like it plays out almost like an audio play in their head, and they're writing that down, and then they break that down into the script. Other writers write all of the action beats and then write the dialogue after that. And I do that more often than I like. And every time I do it, I tell myself, that's it. I'm never going to do that again because I hate it. I hate having to go back and rewrite and write dialogue after I've already written the action beats. So for me, I'll write, if some bit of dialogue comes to me while I'm writing the outline, I'll write it in the margins. It'll probably look, I think I have a sample of it here. It looks something like this. And you'll see little bits of dialogue in those circles over there and things like that. As I'm outlining, I may write little, some of the dialogue. But typically what I do is I write the dialogue as I'm writing the scene. So I'll write the action beats and then I write the dialogue right then. At least that's what I try to do. Sometimes if I'm getting in a hurry, I'll skip it for whatever reason if the dialogue seems to be holding me up. But that's dangerous because then I end up missing the dialogue and I have to write it all at the end, and that's no fun. That's no fun for me. Do massive crossover events hurt or help the comic industry in the long run? Well, I kind of feel like these events bring readers in, and I don't love them, and I think they can hurt the story. I think they definitely hurt story, but because I feel like anytime you get a book that's really written by committee, which a lot of these big event comics are written by a bunch of people in a room, and I've been involved in writing those. I don't think you get a great. It's just not your best work, not in comics. But it's hard to argue that they increase sales, which helps comic shops, which helps the publisher, which helps the writers who are writing those. And I remember years ago being at a bookstore signing, and I can't remember what event was going on, but both DC and Marvel had their big summer events going on. And this customer came in, and I mean, he started ranting the moment he walked through the door, ranting about how big events ruined comics and how they're just terrible. He hates them, hates big events. And he went and he was buying his comics, and he was just but he ranted to everyone who was in earshot the entire time. And I was sitting there, and there were a couple other creators there. We were all doing our signing. I said, hey man, if you want a book that isn't tied into big events, you should try the Six Gun, because it's its own story and it's not tied into any events. And he picked up the Six Gun, and he looked at it and put it back, threw it back down, and went back to pick his books up, and still ranting every step of the way. And as he was leaving, I asked, hey, what'd you pick up this week? And he showed me a stack of comics. He had a big stack of comics, and every one of those books was an event tie-in. So they, I don't know. I think they don't necessarily help story, but I don't know that they hurt the industry in any way. So there we go. All right, guys, I think we've reached the end of our time together. I'm going to do this again next week. I'll try to do this fairly, relatively regularly. I know there were some questions we probably didn't get to, but we will, hopefully if you can join us again next time, we'll remember it. Maybe I'll look to these questions and try to, maybe if you can't join us next time, I'll try to answer some of them, and we'll load those in as well. So I have what drink should I have next time? Anyone have any suggestions for a beverage that I should have in our next broadcast? If not, I'm not going to make a margarita again, but we'll make something. But it looks like, oh, no big drink suggestions. So I'm going to have to be left to my own devices. And that is, that's never a good thing. But thank you all for joining me. Oh, a screwdriver. All right, there we go. Byron, screwdriver. I'm going to make a screwdriver for next broadcast. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you're watching it later, thanks for watching then. And we will, I'll be here. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at Cullen Bunn. You can visit my website, cullenbunn.com. You can visit my Patreon, which is Cullen Bunn. Check those out, and check out the bungalow if you haven't listened to that yet. But thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you all next time. Goodbye.